What happens when you mix incredible storytelling, beautifully crafted environments, and some of the most engaging gameplay in the FPS genre? You get one of the best trilogies in all of gaming. Bioshock is a video game series that's hard not to love, especially if you're a fan of first-person shooters. The first game delivers one of the most iconic narratives and worlds in gaming. The second builds on that foundation, improving the core mechanics while refining the atmosphere, and the third, well, Infinite completely rewrites the rules for better and arguably for worse. In today's video, I'll be diving deep into all three Bioshock games. We'll explore what makes each of them special, how they differ from one another, and most importantly, rank them from worst to best, even though all three are fantastic in their own right. But before we dive too deep, what is Bioshock? At its core, Bioshock is a blend of unique first-person combat and deeply philosophical storytelling. Each game explores a different ideology. The first critiques objectivism, the second explores themes of collectivism, and Infinite tackles American exceptionalism and nationalism. And while the philosophies may differ, two things remain constant across the series: the plasmids and the narrative ambition. Plasmids are powers you can use alongside traditional weapons, allowing for creative combat strategies. While you're meant to use them in tandem with guns, it's actually possible to beat all of the games using only plasmids, which I have none. So if the ideas and powers stay the same, what does set these games apart? That would be the gameplay. The first Bioshock has the most stripped-down mechanics, being the earliest in the series. Bioshock 2 makes small but meaningful improvements, while Infinite overhauls the combat completely. It's a bold reinvention, one that improves some aspects and arguably loses others. So with all that said, it's finally time to dive beneath the surface and take a closer look at the nautical and philosophical nonsense that is Bioshock. Bioshock takes place in the mid-Atlantic in the year 1960 within the underwater city of Rapture. And let me tell you, Rapture is one of the greatest set pieces ever created for a video game. That iconic bathysphere ride at the start, it's the perfect introduction. Instead of just dropping you into the world, it slowly pulls back the curtain, giving you a guided tour of its philosophy, architecture, and mystery before letting you loose. When you first rise above the rocks and get that panoramic shot of Rapture's glowing towers through the glass, it's breathtaking. Everyone's first reaction is usually the same: awe. And that's exactly what the game wants you to feel: wonder, curiosity, and maybe even a little unease. That brings us to the atmosphere. Throughout the game, you're constantly reminded that you're deep beneath the ocean. Glass pipe walkways and massive viewing windows surround you at every turn. It's immersive and visually stunning, and it really sells the setting. Weirdly enough, I've always found this game cozy. I know that sounds strange, especially because I have thalassophobia, the fear of deep water, and nearly had a heart attack playing Subnautica. But something about Rapture feels strangely comforting. Maybe it's the lighting, maybe it's the retro futurism, or maybe it's just because Bioshock is such a well-designed world you want to be in it, even as it falls apart around you. Because make no mistake, this city is crumbling. Everyone in Rapture has gone insane and the place is actively decaying. Water seeps through cracks in the ceilings and walls, furniture is overturned, shops are abandoned, and signs of riots are everywhere. But how did it all come to this? We'll get to that soon, but first, let's talk gameplay. First and foremost, plasmids. The most iconic part of Bioshock's gameplay. These are essentially genetic powers you inject into yourself, giving you supernatural abilities, like shooting fire from your hands or flinging objects with your mind. They add a ton of variety to combat, which is good, because let's be honest, the gunplay in Bioshock, it's fine. On console, aiming feels clunky, and if I remember correctly, the aim button is R3, and I'm pretty sure you can't even remap it. It feels awkward enough that I usually just hip-fire everything, but plasmids, that's where the fun begins. There's a solid selection. Telekinesis lets you chuck explosive barrels, or corpses, at enemies. Insect Swarm releases a cloud of bees that harass your enemies. Others stun, distract, or even briefly turn enemies into allies. Now technically, plasmids are meant to be your secondary tools, support options to complement your guns, but some are ridiculously strong on their own. For example, telekinesis can carry you through the entire game, even on survivor difficulty. So if you're going for that platinum trophy and struggling with no deaths, you've got two options. One, cheat it like a coward, or two, use telekinesis and blast your way to victory like a goddamn king. Another unique gameplay system in Bioshock is hacking. You can hack vending machines, turrets, flying drones, safes, you name it, and doing so gives you all kinds of advantages. Cheaper items, extra ammo, extra money, and automated defense systems that fight for you. On harder difficulties, hacking becomes essential. Resources are scarce, and hacked machines give you the edge you need to survive. But is hacking actually fun? In my opinion, Absolutely. I love the original hacking minigame. It's a kind of pipe dream puzzle where you have to redirect the flow of liquid through a maze of tiles, but it's not just a chill puzzle. Some tiles can trigger alarms, set your health to 0, or speed up the flow, forcing you to quickly think. Sure, sometimes the layout is total BS and the puzzle is literally unsolvable, but if you find the right tonics during your playthrough, upgrades that make hacking easier, it becomes a lot more manageable. Speaking of tonics, Bioshock has a huge selection of them, and they've really let you tailor your playstyle. Some gives you bonus wrench damage, some shock enemies when they hit you, others boost your stealth or hacking. They're like passive perks that make every playthrough feel a little different. The thing that sets Bioshock apart from almost every other FPS is its incredible story and the themes it explores. In each game, you're dropped into a so-called utopia, a city built on extreme ideology. In the first game, that city is Rapture, and it's founded on the philosophy of objectivism. But here's the catch. Bioshock understands something that many fictional worlds ignore. Utopia is impossible. And that's the point. These aren't just cities, they're ideological experiments taken to their extreme. And by the time you arrive, they've all gone horribly wrong. Your first real introduction to Rapture comes in the form of a monologue from Andrew Ryan himself, as you descend into the city via bathysphere.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question.
In just a few lines, Ryan lays out everything he believes. To him, religion is a lie, government is theft, and altruism, helping others at your own expense, is the worst sin of all. He believes a man is entitled to the sweat of his own brow, and that no one has the right to take from him. Not the church, not the state, not anyone. And for a moment, it worked. Rapture thrived. Freed from the constraints of government and morality, the city became a haven for artists, scientists, and entrepreneurs. Innovation exploded, especially with the discovery of Adam, a genetic substance that allowed people to rewrite their DNA and gain superhuman abilities. The rich got richer, the poor got desperate, and inequality grew wider than anyone expected. And in that chaos stepped one man who knew exactly how to exploit the system, Frank Fontaine. Fontaine rose to power by doing what Ryan refused to. He pretended to care. He created charities and orphanages, but they were just fronts for a massive smuggling operation. He supplied the lower class with weapons, Adam, and false hope, all while building an army of loyal followers. But Fontaine didn't just want money, he wanted power, and he knew the only way to take control of Rapture was to get rid of Ryan. So he faked his death, disappeared, and returned under a new identity. He became someone the people could rally behind, a revolutionary, a savior. And with that, the Civil War began, and Rapture began to fall. And that's where we come in. We play as Jack, a seemingly random man who survives a plane crash in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But instead of drowning or waiting for help, he finds something impossible, a towering lighthouse standing alone in the sea. Inside, there's no rescue, no radio, just a strange metal pod, a bathysphere. We descend, and that's when Andrew Ryan welcomes us with his infamous monologue. A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And then Rapture. But this isn't the utopia Ryan promised. What we find is a city torn apart. The Civil War has left everything in ruins. The Splicers, citizens driven mad by their addiction to Adam, roam the halls. Signs of protest, destruction, and despair are everywhere. It's clear this place has fallen apart. But just when we think we're alone, we're contacted by a voice over the radio. Atlas. Atlas acts as our guide through the chaos, pointing us towards safe paths, giving us background on Rapture, and most importantly, asking for our help. His family is trapped and he wants us to help him rescue them and escape the city together. So, we follow his lead. He helps us survive the medical pavilion, we fight through Neptune's bounty, and all the while, we're trying to reach his family and find a way back to the surface. But that's when things go from bad to worse. Right in front of us, Atlas's family gets blown to smithereens, and our way back to the surface is gone. But thankfully, Atlas has somehow survived, and now we have a new task. We need to kill Andrew Ryan. We fight our way through Rapture, level by level, meeting the last remnants of the city's population. Some are completely insane, like Sander Cohen, while others, like Julie Langford, still cling to reason. And finally, after all the chaos, we reach Andrew Ryan's office. The man who's been trying to kill us from the moment we arrived. He's shut off the city's oxygen supply, sent security drones after us, thrown every obstacle in our path, and now here we are, face to face. And all he wants to do is talk.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No, a man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm, a family, an airplane, a crash, and then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down. Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Come in. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Run! Stop! Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys. Kill! A man chooses! A slave obeys! Obey!
Hurry now! Grab Ryan's genetic key! Now would you kindly put it in that goddamn machine?
A man chooses, a slave obeys. Throughout the game, we kept hearing a strange phrase, "Would you kindly?" It sounded harmless, polite, just a way to give us directions. Most players didn't even think twice about it. But it turns out that phrase was a trigger, a command, a form of control. Did we choose to swim to that lighthouse? Did we choose whether to save or harvest those little sisters? Did we even choose to play this game? Everything we did, every choice we thought we made wasn't ours at all. We were a slave, and the man we thought was helping us, Atlas, was the one holding the leash. This is one of the greatest plot twists in gaming history. It flips the story, the gameplay, and even your own agency as a player completely on its head. Our one ally was our greatest enemy, and the villain we were sent to kill, he wasn't fighting us. He was fighting Atlas. In the end, Andrew Ryan accepts his fate. He refuses to beg, he refuses to run. He chooses to die on his own terms, because as he says, a man chooses, a slave obeys. And us, we were the slave. With Andrew Ryan dead, Atlas drops the act and reveals his true identity, Frank Fontaine, the criminal mastermind who started the civil war that destroyed Rapture. Now that Fontaine has control of the city, he no longer needs us. And like everything else in Rapture, we're disposable. So our new mission becomes clear. Find a way to break Fontaine's control and kill him. Thankfully, the same man who created the mind control system also built a cure for it, but getting it won't be easy. And actually, quick side note, this part of the game is super underrated. When you get the first dose of the cure, it temporarily scrambles your plasmid loadout. Every time you use one, it randomly switches to another. It kind of turns the game into Call of Duty gun game, but with plasmids. Sure, sometimes you get stuck with something useless, but it's a fun way to experiment with abilities you might have ignored. It keeps things chaotic and fresh, especially on repeat playthroughs. But once we collect the second part of the cure, the control is finally broken. From there, things escalate fast. We become a big daddy, we escort a little sister through a dangerous stretch of the city, and we finally make it to the end. The final showdown with Frank Fontaine. By this point, Fontaine has overdosed on Adam and transformed into a grotesque powerhouse full of rage and ego. It's not just a battle for survival, it's the final chapter in the fall of Rapture. The final boss fight against Fontaine plays out in phases, each with its own massive health bar and elemental theme: fire, ice, and electricity. After each phase, he retreats to the center and we drain some Adam from him before repeating the cycle. Mechanically, it's not the most challenging fight. Thanks to powerful tools like telekinesis and heat-seeking rockets, Fontaine becomes a bit of a pushover, even on Survivor difficulty. And because of that, this ending often gets criticized for feeling underwhelming. Honestly, I get it. It's not the toughest or most creative final boss in gaming, but personally, I still enjoy the fight. Not because of the gameplay itself, but because of what it represents. Fontaine isn't some calculated mastermind in the end. He's a man driven by greed, power, and ego, stripped of his manipulative charm and fully consumed by Adam. Throughout the game, we saw his cunning, his ability to control us without us even knowing it. But in that moment, we see who he really is. Brute force, desperate rage, unchecked pride, and that, to me, fits his character perfectly. So sure, it's not the most mechanically intense finale, but thematically, it works. Now earlier, I mentioned that your choices in this game weren't really yours. They were Atlas's, but that's not entirely true. There's one thing that's genuinely left up to you: what you do with the little sisters. Whether you save them, harvest them, or do a mix of both, you'll get one of three endings. A good ending where Jack lives out a peaceful life and the little sisters stay by his side until the very end. A bad ending where the splicers escape to the surface, and yes, there's a nuke involved. And a sad ending, which is basically the bad one, except instead of being furious, Tenenbaum is just heartbroken. So yeah, technically your decision affects the outcome, but here's the real question. Was it really you who chose, or was it just another illusion of choice, another command from Atlas? Now that the main game is finished, let's quickly talk about the DLC, because yes, Bioshock 1 actually has a few extra modes that a lot of people forget about. First, there's a shocking turn of events, a puzzle map where you have to figure out how to bring a little sister down from a broken Ferris wheel without just brute forcing your way through. Then there's the Eye and Team, another puzzle-based challenge where you're tasked with killing a big daddy. But with a catch: you can't use any weapons or offensive plasmids. And finally, my personal favorite, Worlds of Hurt. This one's a full-on combat gauntlet. You go from room to room clearing out waves of enemies, earning Adam and cash to buy upgrades before moving on to the next fight. Now none of these are groundbreaking or essential to the story, but they're all fun little side modes, especially for people who enjoy problem solving or combat challenges. Worlds of Hurt in particular is just pure fun if you like testing your builds and going all out with your arsenal. As I wrap up talking about Bioshock 1, I want to point something out. I've intentionally left out a lot of the lore and character side stories. This isn't meant to be a full story breakdown, it's a retrospective, a look at how these games evolve across the series. So characters like Tenenbaum, Sander Cohen, Peach Wilkins, Dr. Suchong, Julie Langford, Jack's mother, and a few others who only show up in audio logs, I've skipped them. Not because they're unimportant, but because this video is more about the big picture. Oh, and before we move on, Andrew Ryan is Jack's father. Bioshock 2 was actually my first introduction to the series, and honestly, this game used to terrify me. I remember loading up my brother's save file, which was somewhere near the end of the game in Persephone. There was this dark room with a tonic hidden inside, and when I grabbed it and turned around, a splicer was just standing there, right behind me. I panicked, paused the game, and when I unpaused, he was gone. I can't for the life of me explain what happened, but I know it happened. And to this day, that part of the game still sends a chill down my spine. Oh, and for some reason, I swear the ending cutscene used to play Try by Pink. But I've beaten this game many times now, and that's just not true. So I guess my memory was lying to me. Bioshock 2 takes us back to Rapture, 10 years after the events of the first game. The city is in even worse shape now. Rooms are flooded, overgrown with coral, and collapsing in on themselves. It's beautiful, in a decayed kind of way. But the best part of this game, and the reason it used to be my favorite, is simple. You get to play as a big daddy. I could talk forever about how fun it is to drill enemies in an FPS, but I think you get the idea. The gameplay in Bioshock 2, and I don't think this is even up for debate, is the best in the entire series. It keeps the same framework as the first game, but everything just feels more refined. Aiming still isn't perfect, but the guns and plasmids are way more fleshed out. out. The drill is a huge upgrade from the wrench, the rivet gun lets you lay down traps, and the hacking gun is straight up one of the coolest additions. It lets you set up mini turrets mid-fight like a tower defense game. But it's not just the weapons. The plasmids are way better too. Take Electro Bolt, for example. In the first game, upgrading it didn't really change how it worked, other than adding a little bit more stun. But in Bioshock 2, each upgrade changes its function. At level 3, you basically become Emperor Palpatine, just holding down the fire button to shoot a stream of lightning. Another improvement to the gameplay is that it's just faster than Bioshock 1. You can dual wield your plasmid and gun, so you're no longer stuck switching between them mid-fight. Hacking's also changed. Now it doesn't pause the game, instead you're thrown straight into the minigame while enemies can still attack you. Personally, I like the hacking in the first game a bit more. It gave you some breathing room, but it's not bad here either. So with gameplay clearly evolving, the big question is, can Bioshock 2's story live up to the standard set by the original? The philosophy on display this time isn't objectivism, it's collectivism, and it's embodied by the new antagonist, Sophia Lamb. The game opens on New Year's Eve 1958. You play as Subject Delta, a prototype Big Daddy bonded to a little sister named Eleanor. Everything seems normal until you're separated from her and confronted by her mother, Sophia Lamb. And let's just say, she's not thrilled that her daughter has been turned into a little monster. So what does she do? She hypnotizes you and forces you to shoot yourself in the head. You die. 10 years later, Eleanor somehow manages to bring you back to life using a Vita chamber, and now with your bond to her still intact, you have one goal. Find Eleanor and stop Sophia Lamb. But before I dive deeper into the story, I actually skipped some important backstory from the first game, especially about Dr. Tenenbaum and the creation of the Little Sisters. In Bioshock 1, Tenenbaum is introduced when you're given the choice to harvest or save the Little Sisters. Harvesting gives you more Adam, but it kills the girl. Tenenbaum, showing obvious guilt, begs you to spare them and offers a reward for doing so. It's easy to see her as a good person trying to right her wrongs, but here's the twist. She's the reason they exist in the first place. After discovering a strange sea slug that could produce a genetic substance called Adam, Rapture scientists free from moral constraints began experimenting, but the slugs weren't producing enough on their own. So, Tenenbaum had an idea. What if you implanted the slug inside a living human host? It worked, but only one kind of host was viable. Conscious little girls. That's how the Little Sisters were born. Eventually, Tenenbaum realized the horror of what she helped create, and now she's trying to undo the damage, rescuing the girls and helping them become human again. Now that we've got a bit of backstory, it's easy to understand just how furious Sophia Lamb must be. Her daughter was taken, turned into a little sister, and paired with one of Rapture's most feared monsters. So when she sees you, Subject Delta, her first instinct is to take control of you and make you shoot yourself in the head. 10 years later, you wake up. As you pick yourself off the floor, you get your first real look at the world around you. And it's immediately clear how much has changed since the first game. Coral now covers the walls, rooms are partially submerged, and nature is beginning to reclaim the city. Rapture is no longer just decaying, it's drowning. But even more noticeable than the setting is you. From the moment you take control, you can feel the sheer power of being a Big Daddy. Your footsteps thud like thunder, you carry massive weapons like they're nothing, one hand on a rivet gun, the other crackling with plasmids. It's such a shift from playing as Jack in the first game. In Bioshock 1, there was a sense of mystery. Flashes of strange images, unanswered questions, and a protagonist with no clear identity. But Bioshock 2 replaces mystery with something else entirely. Power fantasy. And personally, I think it's way more exciting to play as a giant armored tank than as some guy with a wrench and a vague past. The difference between the two game stories is pretty significant in my opinion. What made the first game so memorable was that unforgettable twist near the end. It completely recontextualized everything you'd done up to that point, but Bioshock 2 doesn't try to replicate that kind of shock. Instead, it tells a more grounded, emotional story, one that explores different types of parenting and offers a critique of extreme collectivism. It's not as mind-blowing as the first game, but it's far from bad. In fact, it's pretty powerful in its own right. Sophia Lamb wants to raise her daughter Eleanor to be the first utopian, a living vessel for Rapture's collective consciousness. Using Adam, she plans to fill Eleanor with the memories and identities of the people of Rapture. And that's what I meant when I said extreme collectivism. Lamb doesn't just want Eleanor to lead, she wants her to become everyone. Her parenting is, let's say, a little overbearing. Meanwhile, Subject Delta, your character, doesn't want to mold Eleanor into a leader. He just wants to protect her. He wants her to be safe, to have a life of her own, and that difference forms the emotional backbone of Bioshock 2. Now with all that in mind, it's time to move on to the other important characters in the story. First up, there's Augustus Sinclair. In a way, Sinclair plays the same role as Atlas did in the first game. Your voice in the ear guiding your way through Rapture. But unlike Atlas, Sinclair isn't secretly a megalomaniacal But unlike Atlas, Sinclair isn't secretly a
Megalomaniacal.
conman. He's more of a morally gray businessman who actually helps you throughout the game. As you progress through each level, Sinclair provides some background on the areas you explore and the key people who run them. For example, in Ryan Amusements, his job is mostly just to move you forward, telling you to grab Incinerate so you can melt through an ice block and continue. But in the next level, Pauper's Drop, we meet someone far more important. Grace Holloway. Grace was a blues singer who lived in the slums on the surface, and eventually in the slums of Rapture. When she came to Rapture, she quickly saw through Andrew Ryan's utopia, recognizing the hypocrisy in his ideals, and she expressed those thoughts through her music. But of course, Ryan didn't appreciate the criticism. Eventually, Grace's boyfriend, who was a social activist, mysteriously disappeared, likely at Ryan's command. The trauma of that event scared Grace into silence, and she stopped singing her controversial songs. Sometime later, she met Sophia Lamb, and the two became close. So close that when Lamb was imprisoned, she entrusted Grace with the care of her daughter, Eleanor. And for Grace, who had always wanted a child but was unable to have one, this was a dream come true. Sadly, that dream didn't last. A man named Stanley Poole abducted Eleanor and forced her into the Little Sister program. Her assigned Big Daddy? None other than Subject Delta. You. One day, Grace saw Eleanor walking with Delta, and not knowing what had really happened, assumed you had kidnapped and corrupted her. She tried to intervene and was met with a metal arm to the jaw, knocking her out cold. And now we have a choice. Do we finish what we started so long ago, or do we spare this defenseless woman who was dealt a bad hand? Well, it all depends on what kind of parent you want to be. Because of course, Eleanor is always watching and is always taking notes. In Siren Alley, our train gets hit by a torpedo and we meet a man named Simon Wales before killing him and moving on to Dionysus Park. And here we meet the next important character. Stanley Poole, the man who kidnapped Eleanor from Grace. Stanley was a reporter for the Rapture Tribune, one of the city's biggest newspapers. Eventually, Sinclair hired him to dig up dirt on Sophia Lamb. Anything that could convince Andrew Ryan her ideology was a dangerous political threat. To do that, Stanley headed to Dionysus Park, where he posed as a supporter and began embedding himself within Lamb's inner circle. One of Lamb's top followers, Simon Wales, was already a high-ranking member of the family. Stanley convinced him that he was being censored by the Tribune and wanted to join their movement. It worked, and gave Stanley access to the heart of Lamb's organization. But Eleanor grew suspicious of him, and after Lamb was imprisoned, Stanley was left in charge of Dionysus Park. Rather than maintain Lamb's vision, he threw parties, wasted resources, and treated the park like his personal playground. When Eleanor threatened to expose him, Stanley panicked, and in a desperate move to silence her, he sold her to the Little Sister's orphanage, turning her into a little sister under the care of Subject Delta. Things got worse. After Lamb escaped from prison, Stanley feared her wrath, so he intentionally flooded Dionysus Park, killing everyone inside to cover his tracks. And now with Lamb back in control, Stanley is living on borrowed time, helping her while praying she never learns the truth. Once we arrive in Dionysus Park, Stanley gives us a task. Eliminate all of the Little Sisters. Why? Because they're gathering Adam. Adam that contains the memories of what happened here, and Stanley is desperate to keep those memories buried. To make sure we comply, he locks the exit until we've done his dirty work. But with Eleanor's growing telepathic powers, she's able to reveal the truth behind the Adam we collect, showing us Stanley's crime through haunting memory sequences. Once the task is complete, Stanley unlocks the way forward, but before we can leave, we get a chilling message from Sophia Lamb. She says she's known about Stanley's betrayal for a long time. In fact, she forgave him, because Eleanor becoming a little sister had actually benefited her cause. But now, after Stanley helped Subject Delta interfere with her plans, that forgiveness is revoked. And then she drops the bombshell. Stanley Poole was the one who turned us into Ryan. That's right. Before we were Subject Delta, we were a man named Johnny Topside, a deep-sea diver who accidentally discovered Rapture. For a brief moment, we were a celebrity, the outsider who stumbled into the impossible city. But Andrew Ryan didn't see a curious explorer. He saw a spy. With Stanley's help, Ryan had us arrested and subjected to horrific experiments. We were turned into the first successful Big Daddy of our kind. Now the door opens, and once again, we're given a choice. Do we spare Stanley Poole, or make him pay for everything he's done? Moving on to the next level, we meet the final character in Bioshock 2 who we have a choice in killing, Gilbert Alexander, or as he now calls himself, Alex the Great. Gilbert was once a brilliant scientist. He started out at Fontaine Futuristics before eventually working under Andrew Ryan. He was responsible for designing Rapture's automated security systems, and played a crucial role in developing the Big Daddy program. Building on Dr. Suchong's earlier work, Gilbert helped create the Alpha Series Big Daddies that were tightly pair-bonded to a specific little sister. The idea was to ensure absolute protection. but it worked too well. If the bond was ever broken, the Big Daddies would go mad. After the failure of the Alpha series, Gilbert shifted focus to the Protector program, which created more stable and manageable Big Daddies. He also collaborated with Sinclair and Suchong on the design of the Vita Chambers, Rapture's resurrection technology. But over time, Gilbert began to regret his work. The ethics, the consequences, the horrors, it all weighed on him. That's when he joined Sophia Lamb's family, seeking redemption. Sophia took advantage of his guilt. She manipulated him into volunteering for a new experiment. She would inject him with massive amounts of Adam to absorb the collective consciousness of Rapture. Every memory, every experience. The result was a disaster. Gilbert was mutated beyond recognition. His mind shattered. What's left is a corrupted husk of a man, part human, part machine, split between his decaying body and an AI version of himself that now refers to himself in the third person as Alex the Great. And now that robotic voice guides us through the facility. His new self taunting us while his previous self tells us to kill him through audio logs. Now that we've arrived at Persephone, Rapture's prison, and the final area of the game, we're given a rare and haunting perspective, how the little sisters see the world. In this dreamlike sequence, we don't just walk through Persephone, we see it through the eyes of a child raised in horror. Everything is warped and idealized, from blood-soaked hallways to crumbling walls, all painted over with innocence. But this section also delivers a powerful moment of reflection. Scattered throughout are statues, carved representations of our past choices. They depict us either sparing or killing Grace, Stanley, and Gilbert. It's a silent but effective reminder Eleanor is always watching. The decisions you make don't just shape the world, they shape her. If you've shown mercy, she learns compassion, but if you've chosen vengeance, she will do the same. As we reach the finale, our ally Sinclair is captured by Sophia Lamb and tragically transformed into Subject Omega, one of the Alpha series Big Daddies. And one of the most emotional moments in the game, we're forced to kill him, and with his dying breath, all he says is thank you. From here, we finally reunite with Eleanor, who is now a big sister. She fights alongside us, and when needed, she'll leap into battle without hesitation. With her help, we rally a group of little sisters to execute a plan to escape Rapture. The details are a bit abstract, but essentially they boil water to raise a lifeboat-like vessel to the surface, giving us a way out. And now, the ending. Depending on the choices you made throughout the game, you'll get one of 6 variations, but most of them boil down to 2 paths. In one, you save Sophia Lamb from drowning, giving her a second chance. In the other, you stand back and let her die. A slow and terrifying death. Your final moments also depend on Eleanor. She either kills you, saves you, or even absorbs your essence, based on the moral example you set throughout the game. It's not just about what you did, it's about what she learned from watching you. So how does Bioshock 2 stack up? Honestly, the story isn't bad at all. It explores themes of parenthood, influence, and redemption in a very different way than the first game. But while it does a lot right, it can't quite escape the shadow of its predecessor. The original Bioshock had a tighter narrative and arguably one of the best twists in gaming history. Still, Bioshock 2 isn't a disappointment. It's a nearly great game, and we're not done yet, because surprisingly, this game had a multiplayer mode and a few DLC expansions worth talking about. First, the multiplayer. When I was a kid playing Bioshock 2 for the first time, I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I never got to experience the multiplayer. I had no idea what I was getting into. Going in, I expected a tacked on, poorly made mode that didn't add anything to the base game. But immediately after loading into the hub area, I was hit with a much more interesting premise than I ever expected. First surprise, character selection. I thought I'd just be playing as some nameless splicer with a few guns, but nope. You actually get to choose from 10 different characters, each with their own backstory and unique appearance. It's a cool touch that adds a bit of narrative flavor to what could have been a very generic experience. Even better, there are new weapons and plasmids. There are 2 new guns, the nail gun, which fires in rapid bursts but isn't very accurate, and the elephant gun, which is a high-risk, high-reward weapon. It can one-shot enemies with a headshot, but otherwise it's pretty useless. As for plasmids, we get 3 entirely new ones. Arrow Dash, which lets you launch yourself forward and damage anyone in your path. Geyser Trap, which is basically Cyclone Trap, but it can combo with Electrobolt for added damage. And Houdini, which makes you go invisible, great for stealthy plays or escaping bad situations. These additions really boost the creativity and replayability of the mode. Plus, you can even unlock weapon attachments that modify how your guns behave. It's a deeper system than I expected, especially for a side mode. Next up, the maps. I jumped into a private match on the Fort Frolic map since that's my favorite area from the first game, and I've got to say, it's a solid multiplayer map. The layout is clean and feels authentic to Bioshock. What surprised me was how interactive the maps are. You can hack turrets around the map to fight for you, there are breakable walls that open up new pathways, and just like in other games, there's a sort of Juggernaut suit power-up, except here it's the Big Daddy suit, and it functions pretty much the same way. Now for the sad part. Unfortunately, Bioshock 2's multiplayer just isn't that popular anymore. The player base is small and matchmaking can take a really long time. That said, there is still a community keeping it alive. There's a public Discord server where fans can find matches more easily. Even though the server isn't always active, it's great to see that the mode still has a dedicated following. If you're like me and never got around to trying the multiplayer, I honestly recommend hopping on, joining the server, and playing a few matches. It's a surprisingly fun and thoughtful mode that adds even more value to Bioshock 2. Now let's move on to the DLCs. Protector Trials is definitely a DLC of all time. In the main game, whenever you had a little sister, you could bring her to a corpse and start a minigame where you'd defend her while she gathered Adam. It wasn't the best part of the game, but it was fun enough. It gave you more opportunities to engage with the combat system, and it actually served a purpose. It helped you progress. But Protector Trials, it doesn't help you at all. In fact, it doesn't even benefit the main game. The only reward it offers is for Minerva's Den, and even that is locked behind a grind. Here's the kicker. To unlock the Master Protector Gene Tonic, which gives you 25% more Adam per gather, but takes each one take longer, you have to get a perfect 3-star rating on every single trial. And this bonus only applies to Minerva's Den. I remember trying to unlock it years ago. I put in a couple hours thinking I'd chip away at it, and I wasn't even close. Normally, I don't mind a bit of grinding if the process is fun, but this isn't fun. So yeah, Protector Trials, not a fan. But what about Minerva's Den? Well, if you ever wish Bioshock 2 had an incredible story to match its gameplay, you need to play Minerva's Den, because this is where the writing truly shines. In Minerva's Den, we play as Subject Sigma, an Alpha Series Big Daddy reactivated by Brigid Tenenbaum during the events of the main game. In the opening cutscene, we walk through an underwater glass tunnel when we're introduced to Reedwall, the main antagonist of the DLC. He references something called the Thinker and promptly blows up our path, sending us crashing to the ocean floor. Shortly after, we're contacted by a voice claiming to be C.M. Porter, an ally of Tenenbaum, and therefore an ally of ours. He asks for our help in recovering a copy of the Thinker's programming, which he believes could help create a cure for the splicing effects of Adam. Like Atlas or Sinclair in the main games, Porter guides us through Minerva's Den. As we go, we uncover more about the Thinker, Porter, and Wall's past. The Thinker is an advanced super AI built to manage Rapture's automated systems. It was created by two minds, Porter and Wall, but they had very different ideas about what it should be used for. Wall saw it as a way to predict sports scores and stock markets, basically a get-rich-quick machine. Porter, on the other hand, wanted to use the Thinker to replicate the mind of his late wife. A deeply human goal coming from a man surrounded by cold machinery. Eventually, their conflict escalated. Wall planted false evidence to make it seem like Porter was working with Frank Fontaine. Andrew Ryan bought the lie, had Porter thrown into Persephone, and gave full control of the Thinker to Wall. Near the end of the DLC, Wall makes a last-ditch effort to stop us by deactivating the Thinker and confronting us directly. After taking him down, we restart the machine, and Porter asks us to confirm our genetic identity. And then the twist hits. We are Porter. The voice we'd been hearing the entire time, that was the Thinker impersonating Porter, enacting something called the Rapture Departure Protocol. Before being imprisoned, the real Porter had secretly programmed the Thinker with a final mission, to find a way to escape Rapture. And it did. It created a plan. Use Porter to make a copy of itself, take on the role of his old self, guide him back to the core, and escape together. Just like the first Bioshock, there's a massive twist that recontextualizes everything you've seen. But this time, it's not a person pretending to be someone else, it's an AI pretending to be you. I'll say it again. The main story of Bioshock 2 isn't bad, but when you compare it to Minerva's Den, it's clear which one has the stronger narrative. It makes me wonder how different, better, or worse the main game might have been if they'd fleshed out this story instead of focusing on Sophia Lamb. But the story isn't the only thing Minerva's Den does well. The DLC also introduces a brand new weapon and plasmid, the Ion Laser and Gravity Well. The Ion Laser fires a continuous energy beam that dishes out solid damage. It's powerful, satisfying, and feels different from anything in the base game. Meanwhile, Gravity Well creates a vortex that sucks in nearby splicers, leaving them helpless while you pick them off. It's basically a crowd control dream, and a ton of fun to use. There are also a few splicer variants thrown into the mix, which help keep encounters fresh and unpredictable. Overall, Bioshock 2 is a fantastic entry in the series. The gameplay is excellent, and the story, while not on the same level as the first game, is still solid and emotionally resonant. Add Minerva's Den on top of that, and you've got a package that absolutely deserves more recognition than it gets. But can I say the same about the next game, Bioshock Infinite? Let's get into it. I said this in the intro, but I'll say it again. What makes a Bioshock game Bioshock? To me, it's a complex story that tackles a deep philosophical ideology, all set in a ruined city with a unique twist on first-person shooter gameplay. Why do I bring this up? Because Bioshock Infinite doesn't feel like a Bioshock game. It's so radically different from the other two, and honestly, I actually really like it. This time, we leave the dark depths of Rapture and head to its polar opposite, the bright, floating city of Columbia. Instead of objectivism and underwater dystopia, we're dropped into a theocratic society suspended in the clouds. It's beautiful, patriotic, and steeped in religious zealotry. Basically everything Andrew Ryan would have despised. Not only are the environments a complete shift, but the gameplay is too. One of my biggest gripes with Infinite is the fact that you can only carry 2 weapons at a time. It limits your combat options to whatever's lying around, which gets frustrating, especially because the gunplay here is the best in the series. Finally, aiming down sights is smooth and practical, and every gun feels powerful and satisfying. In the older games, you could get away with just using the wrench or drill plus some plasmids. Guns felt more like backup tools. But in Infinite, firearms are front and center, and the game actively encourages you to use them. That's a huge step forward. Then we have Vigors, this game's version of plasmids, and honestly, they're the most fun yet. Devil's Kiss is a more explosive take on Incinerate, Shock Jockey is a snappier version of Electrobolt, and new powers like Undertow, Charge, and Return to Sender all feel fresh and impactful. And I can't forget Elizabeth. She's not just a companion, she's actually useful. During combat, she'll toss you ammo, health, or salts when you're running low. Plus, she can open tears, which are rips in space-time that let you pull in things from alternate realities, like turrets, health kits, or cover. It's a cool system that adds some tactical variety, and Elizabeth never becomes a burden. In fact, she's probably one of the best AI companions in any game. But now let's talk about what's usually the best part of a Bioshock game: the story and the villain. If you've ever played Bioshock Infinite, then you'll know right away this game is very patriotic. At the beginning, after being baptized and officially entering Columbia, you wake up in what's called the Garden of Eden. And what's the first thing you see? Statues of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington. But they aren't just historical figures here, they're practically deified. Right away, the game tells you everything you need to know. The people of Columbia worship the founding fathers like gods. This city doesn't just have nationalism, it has full-blown American religious zealotry. And behind all this madness is one man: Zachary Hale Comstock. Comstock served in the US Army and participated in the Wounded Knee Massacre. Afterwards, racked with guilt, he sought redemption through religion and was reborn, literally, through baptism. He became a devout preacher and gained a massive following, eventually rising to power within the US government. Eventually, Comstock crossed paths with a physicist named Lutece. Depending on the timeline, it was either Rosalind or Robert, but really it doesn't matter. The Luteces were conducting groundbreaking research into quantum mechanics, specifically atom manipulation and dimensional theory. Comstock became fascinated with their work, and together they laid the foundation for the floating city of Columbia, a city Comstock claimed he had seen in a vision. Backed by government funding, Columbia was built and launched into the sky, with Comstock declaring himself its prophet and leader. Under his rule, Columbia's political ideology took shape. He founded a party called the Founders, a group made up of the city's white elite. Comstock was deeply racist. He viewed white Americans as the only pure race, and held black people and immigrants in contempt, and even declared Abraham Lincoln the Great Apostate, blaming him for America's downfall. Meanwhile, the Luteces made a massive discovery. They managed to communicate across realities, and eventually made contact with their alternate universe counterparts. On October 8, 1893, the first tear between dimensions was successfully opened, and the two versions of Lutece met face to face. Seeing this as a window into the future, Comstock doubled down on funding their research. With access to other realities, he began pulling in technology and knowledge from alternate worlds. Things like skyhooks, vigors, and even Songbird, all developed with the help of Columbia's top industrialist, Jeremiah Fink. These miracles only solidified Comstock's status as a divine figure in the eyes of Columbia's citizens. To them, he wasn't just a leader, he was a messiah. We play as Booker DeWitt, a private investigator with a mysterious past who's given a simple-sounding job: bring us the girl and wipe away the dead. He's sent to a lighthouse, a direct nod to the first game, but instead of going down into the ocean, he's launched up into the sky to the floating city of Columbia. As we explore, it becomes clear this isn't just a city, it's a theocratic, ultra-nationalist cult built on American exceptionalism. And the girl we're after, Elizabeth, is locked inside a giant angel statue at the center of it all. We rescue her, and the mission shifts from find the girl to escape with her. But the story doesn't stay that simple for long. As we travel together, we learn more about Columbia's prophet, Zachary Comstock, the mysterious Lutece twins who appear and vanish at will, and Elizabeth herself, who begins unlocking strange powers that allow her to tear open rifts between realities. We also meet a man named Commander Slate, a veteran of the Battle of Wounded Knee, a battle Comstock claims to have fought in, but Slate insists that no one named Zachary Comstock was ever there. So, who's lying? Eventually, we kill Comstock, and that's when the real story begins. During the epilogue, the truth finally unravels. Elizabeth is actually Booker's daughter. Before the events of the game, Booker was a widowed war veteran drowning in gambling debt. Desperate and broken, he was approached with an offer he couldn't refuse. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. But what he didn't realize was that he had just sold his daughter. The man who bought her was Zachary Comstock. During the exchange, as Comstock pulled the baby, Anna, through a tear in reality, her pinky finger got severed in the process. That one accident left Elizabeth, Anna, existing in two realities at once. And because of that, she gained the ability to open tears in reality, just like the Lutece twins who helped Comstock build Columbia in the first place. From there, Booker and Elizabeth go on a journey, not just through Columbia, but through reality itself, and subtle things start changing. One of the first signs, Elizabeth's pendant. Early in the game, you choose which necklace she wears, the bird or the cage. At the time, it feels like a pointless choice, but later on, her pendant mysteriously changes to the one you didn't choose. That's not your Elizabeth anymore. Eventually, they arrive at the river where Booker was once baptized. The moment he tried to wash away the sins of Wounded Knee. But here's the twist. In one timeline, Booker refused the baptism, stayed himself, and lived with his guilt. In another, he accepted it, and was reborn as Zachary Comstock. So, Comstock is Booker. Just one who sought salvation, but lost his soul in the process. And since every Comstock is born from this moment, the only way to stop them is to erase that choice altogether. So, Elizabeth takes us under, drowning Booker before the baptism can ever happen. No baptism, no Comstock. No Comstock, no Columbia. No Columbia, no Elizabeth. And with the final notes of a piano, one version of Elizabeth disappears, and then another, until we're left with nothing but a black screen. The story of Bioshock Infinite is a lot. And while it isn't bad, I'll be honest, I'm not really a fan of all the parallel universe, alternate reality stuff. It just feels convoluted. In my opinion, it's not a very compelling kind of story. Stories like this always come down to one thing. What if this person made a different decision? What if they got baptized? What if they didn't? What if Anna lost her head instead of her pinky? It's all just hypothetical outcomes stacked on top of each other. And that brings me to the DLC, which, surprise, is exactly that. Instead of getting a new story with new characters like we got in Minerva's Den, we just got what if blah 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 all over again. There's so much more I could say about this game's story and lore. From the Lutece twins' quantum existence to how tears affect memory, but we'd be here for hours. So let's move on to the DLC. And let me just say, the Burial at Sea story, it kind of ruins the first game for me. But first, the gameplay. The Burial at DLC introduced 3 new weapons to the game. First, there's the Tommy gun, which is pretty similar to the one from Bioshock 1, except now it's in a game with better gameplay, so it's just more fun to use. Next, the crossbow, which is different from the one we all remember. This version fires sleeping bolts and is used exclusively by Elizabeth in the second part of the DLC. And finally, the radar range, a weapon that literally makes enemies' heads explode. It's by far one of the most satisfying weapons in the entire series. The DLC also adds 3 new plasmids. Ironsides, which absorbs bullets and turns them into ammo. Peeping Tom, which makes you invisible and lets you see enemies through walls, very useful in stealth sections. And Old Man Winter, which is essentially a freeze-based plasmid similar to Winter Blast from the earlier games. Overall, all of these weapons and plasmids are welcome additions and make the gameplay in Burial at Sea a lot more fun, especially if you're a fan of mixing stealth and action. Now for the story. Burial at Sea takes place in a timeline where Anna dies during the transaction between Booker and Comstock. In this version of events, Comstock uses the Lutece device to escape into Rapture and assumes the identity of Booker DeWitt. And just to preface, this is apparently the canon timeline for the original Bioshock, so keep that in mind. In part 1, Elizabeth comes to Rapture to work with Booker to find a little sister named Sally, but it turns out she's actually using Sally as bait to punish and kill Comstock for what he did to Anna. They eventually find Sally, but a Big Daddy attacks and kills both Booker and Elizabeth. However, because of Elizabeth's powers, she's brought back to life, without her ability to open tears. Struck with guilt over Sally's fate, she decides to return to Rapture to save all the little sisters. And now we're in part 2. And if you know where this story goes, you probably understand why it ruins the first game for me. Elizabeth meets Atlas, who immediately wants her dead. But then, like she's Dexter, her dark passenger shows up in the form of Booker's voice, telling her how to escape. She convinces Atlas she can get him back to Rapture since they're in a deep-sea department store, and tells them the key is Dr. Suchong, the scientist who created the Big Daddy little sister bond and the mind control used on Jack. So begins her journey to find Suchong. Along the way, she returns to Columbia, why not, I guess, and finds out that her killing Daisy Fitzroy in Infinite was planned by the Lutesses to make her more independent. I'll give credit where it's due. I actually like the torture scene with Atlas. I'm kind of a sucker for a well-done torture scene. Watching characters break down or evolve in those moments can be fascinating, and Atlas hammering a needle into Elizabeth's skull is absolutely cringeworthy in the best way. But right after that, things fall apart. See, in Bioshock 1, Suchong dies trying to force the bond between Big Daddies and Little Sisters. We see his body impaled by Big Daddy after he strikes a little sister. His death felt fitting, a cruel man killed by his own creation. But in Burial at Sea, we learn that Elizabeth is actually the reason the bond worked at all. She tells the Little Sisters how to save the Big Daddies, creating the bond. She completes Suchong's work, and that just guts the original meaning. Suchong didn't die because his cruelty caught up to him. He died because someone from another universe stepped in and nudged history in a direction. And it gets worse. The famous "would you kindly" mind control phrase. Yeah, that came from Elizabeth too. She takes it from Suchong's notes and hands it over to Atlas, knowing it'll lead to Fontaine using it on Jack. So Fontaine didn't plan it, Jack wasn't manipulated by Fontaine's genius. No, Elizabeth was behind all of it. She gave Atlas the key, she made the plan work. Meaning that in this version of the story, Elizabeth is the mastermind behind the mastermind. And honestly, this kinda sucks. The story of the original Bioshock was already perfect, but now it's been meddled with and undermined. Jack is no longer the man who overcame his mental imprisonment. Now, he's just continuing Elizabeth's plan to save all the Little Sisters. His future wasn't his own, it was already laid out for him. And then, in the final cutscene, Elizabeth dies. She sits next to Sally after seeing the future, and that's it. Now, don't get me wrong. The gameplay is still fantastic. It's really fun to play, and the mechanics introduced in Part 2 completely change how you approach the game. I'm usually not the biggest fan of stealth games, but they actually pull it off really well here. Hopefully you made it through the most negative part of this video, because now it's time to get positive again. Bioshock Infinite also has another DLC, Clash in the Clouds. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's similar to Protector Trials from Bioshock 2 in the way that there's no story, just a bunch of combat encounters with unique challenges. Honestly, it's my favorite DLC in the whole series. The gameplay in Infinite is just so satisfying, and the blue ribbon challenges give you something to chase if you're going for 100% completion, and I love that. It doesn't have a story, but it doesn't need one. It's fun, and it hits the mark. Now that we've talked about all three games, there's nothing left to do but rank them from worst to best. Keep in mind this is just my opinion. Personal preferences vary a lot with this series, so your list might look totally different. Coming in at third place, and this hurts to say, Bioshock 2. Bioshock 2 is a fantastic game. It takes the foundation laid by the original, improves on the gameplay, enemy design, and variety incredibly well. But while the other games each have something I'd consider perfect, Bioshock 2 just doesn't have that. The story isn't bad, in fact it's quite good, but it's not perfect. The gameplay is close to perfect, but still not quite there. It's an almost game. Almost a masterpiece. In second place, Bioshock Infinite. Infinite is hands down the best game in the series from a gameplay perspective. The gunplay is tight, the figures are fun and satisfying, and the level design is a creative, vertical spin on the series formula. As for the story, if you're a fan of multiverse narratives, you'll probably love it. It's well written and compelling for its target audience. I just don't personally find those kind of stories very interesting. Also, I didn't go into every last detail of the story in this video, so if you're curious to dive deeper, I found a fantastic Reddit post that breaks down the ending and DLC with extreme detail. I actually learned a lot from it during my research. If you're interested, the link's in the description. And finally, number 1, the original Bioshock. The story is perfect, the gameplay is incredible, the level design is still amazing, everything about this game is just near perfection. Even if someone hasn't played the game, odds are they've still heard the phrase, "would you kindly?" That alone shows how impactful the story and its twist were. To this day, and probably for the rest of my life, I'll continue to believe this is the best story ever written in a video game. The Bioshock trilogy isn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But for me, it's almost perfect, and that's more than enough. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video and want to show some support, then would you kindly hit that like and subscribe button? See what I did there? Anyway, I hope you all have a great day, and goodbye.